Today, we're talking about neurodiversity. What happens when people's brains process information, sensory input, communication, time, and tasks differently than the dominant neurotypical standard? This episode isn't about fixing neurodivergent people. It's about understanding why neurotypical systems, expectations, and assumptions create barriers even when intentions are good. We'll unpack why accommodations feel uncomfortable to offer, why inconsistency is misread as lack of effort, why just tried harder doesn't work, and how neurotypical people can build real capacity for inclusion, functional relationships at work and at home. What if the problem isn't that people aren't trying hard enough, but that we've mistaken neurotypical behavior for universal ability? What if inconsistency isn't manipulation and accommodation isn't unfair? We're going to examine how neurotypical assumptions shape our reactions to difference and how to build capacity for relationships that actually work. Welcome to Communication Skills for Working Women. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Rose May. Do you find yourself second guessing or avoiding conversations because you're worried about being misunderstood?
You're not alone. On this show, we're sharing tangible tools for assertiveness, emotional resilience, and real-life communication wins and fails.
Let's sharpen our communication together. So, picture a typical Monday morning meeting. Everyone is expected to sit still, to process information verbally, sometimes visually, to speak quickly, to maintain eye contact, to track time, and to respond on cue. 3 people leave the meeting feeling exposed, misunderstood, or ashamed. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. But from the inside, each of them had to work twice as hard to appear fine. Here's the key insight. Their struggles are invisible, but the standards are not. What looks like professionalism is actually neurotypical preference masquerading as neutrality. Today, we're going to talk about that a little bit and figure out how can we create an environment that allows for neurotypical or neurodiverse individuals to thrive.
I think this is such an interesting conversation and topic because as I've become more aware of different people's needs in my life, I've started to recognize within my own self that I have things that I have to work harder at in professional settings that I wasn't aware of for a really long time. And one of them is just noise. Like if there's a light that's buzzing in a room or a heater that's kind of humming or something, there are times when it's like my body just locks into that sound and I have to work really hard to bring myself back to the meeting or the conversation that is happening at that time. And I think that it actually happens for a lot of people in a lot of different ways professionally.
I agree. And I am one of those people that can literally tune anything out. Like I I might hear it and I might notice it and I might think to myself, "Oh, that's annoying." And I can tune it out. So that's not something that I have had to respond to or learn how to navigate. And I know that there are so many times and so many individuals who do have to navigate that on a regular basis. What prevents us from establishing and creating and building places where neurodiverse individuals can thrive in those relationships?
That question, I think, is no one wants to be labeled as neurodiverse. Like,
Mm,
I don't want to be labeled as neurodiverse. I don't have a actual diagnosis as neurodiverse, but I can
mm,
tell you I prefer shopping at stores where like the music is calmer, where things are neat and organized. I prefer being in a meeting space where the room is clean and there's not a lot of extra things around. Like,
mm.
I definitely have clothing that I feel more comfortable in, or that I don't feel, that kind of overstimulate me. And
Hmm.
so through my own awareness, I'm like, oh, I definitely have some sensitivities, but I don't want to be labeled as neurodiverse. So I think
Sure.
that's a thing that prevents us because, I mean, who wants a label, right?
Right. And there are individuals who have a diagnosis and are trying to figure out how to navigate a system with a diagnosis, knowing that the diagnosis would help others to understand their behavior, but also feeling like really like it's a very disorienting experience when you're trying to kind of manage those feelings and those expectations in the workplace. Yeah.
So we're going to be talking more towards the neurotypical person and how to consider these things from a neurotypical point of view. Is that correct, Rose?
Yeah, no, yes, and we certainly can. We should do an episode on from a neurodivergent perspective. But this episode specifically is how do we facilitate communication and inclusion when we're neurotypical and we're recognizing that others are struggling,
Hmm.
or we know that others are struggling. Maybe you don't recognize it, but you know that, perhaps someone who maybe someone has openly disclosed their diagnoses of autism and they're working with you and you know that it's a struggle for them.
What about those people that haven't openly disclosed, but you individually see some of the
Mhm.
behaviors and things, but you don't want to, bridge that conversation or, say
Totally.
something because
Yeah.
they may not even be aware.
No, and you need to stop being nosy also, right? Like I don't want to be nosy and and yeah, question someone in that way and invade someone's privacy. But I do
Right.
think that there's opportunities, especially if you're a leader in your organization, there's opportunity to assist and accommodate and communicate with individuals who are struggling with some behaviors or some expectations that might be neurotypically focused.
Right. So let's use this communication framework and talk about our communication goals. For the neurotypical person, when you're dealing with a scenario where there's neurodivergent behavior, some of your common goals may include I want to be fair to everyone, and I also want to support neurodivergent people, and I want high standards and inclusion. I want a functional, productive environment. I don't want anyone to feel excluded. These are all genuine goals.
And it's hard right now because I think the language that we're using in our society today is so there's a heavy connotation to the words that we're using. At the end of the day, this podcast is trying to help you communicate and build relationships. So uh I mean, interpret as you will. The point is to help others feel safe in their work environments, especially if you're a leader, and also to just improve your communication skills. So as you're thinking about communicating with individuals who may be neurodiverse, think about what behaviors are undermining some of these goals that you have to be to support, to continue to have high standards, to have a functional, productive environment. Some typical behaviors are we tend to treat everyone the same by default. And that's not necessarily, the intention is not necessarily uh, malicious by any means, right? I think, again, this is where connotation comes in. Oftentimes, when we speak of treating everyone the same, we're really trying to make sure that we're creating equality. And when we have individuals who are navigating a system that is created for neurotypicals, we have to switch our focus from equality to equity. And so treating everyone the same is not necessarily equitable. It feels equal, but it's not equitable because there are standards that are placed on individuals there are systems that are created for a certain type of person. So expecting consistency as proof of effort is also a behavior that undermines that goal. Relying on verbal instructions only prioritizing efficiency over accessibility, assuming silence means understanding. This is a big deal and not, and I don't even know if we just like we could apply this expectation to so many different situations, not just in this podcast episode, but anytime we're assuming silence is understanding without checking in, can be really harmful. Waiting for people to ask for accommodations. Sometimes people don't even know
Yeah.
that they have access to accommodations, and interpreting difficulty as resistance or lack of motivation. This is the most punitive behavior that I see regularly, is that if someone isn't meeting that standard, we judge it or we characterize that difficulty as resistance or lack of motivation. And now these all feel reasonable, but they preserve barriers. And I would say that, like, this is no shade on older generations, but I would say I hear this quite frequently from people in older generations, and I'm speaking my generation and above. There's a tendency to believe that if someone is experiencing difficulty or resistance, that they're not motivated, or that they're lazy. I hear that word off all the time. I hear lazy all the time, and that is not necessarily the case. Recognizing that some of these behaviors, these expectations, the way that we're treating people, the way we're prioritizing and assuming, recognizing that all of these behaviors undermine that goal is really, really important in our communication.
Yeah, and then we're moving to worries. So I want you to think about what type of leader you want to be. Whether or not you're a neurotypical leader or not, we still all kind of fall into these, like if you consider yourself neurotypical and you're a leader or not, we still fall into some of these current actions, right? Like waiting for people to ask for accommodations instead of reaching out and offering things. And when I accommodations can mean a lot of things. Like I'm even thinking like verbal and written instructions. Like,
Yep.
do people really need to ask? Can I have that written down? So let's talk about some of your worries, but I want you to think about what type of leader, what type of person do you want to be when you're dealing with someone who experiences the world differently than you. And I can promise you, they may experience the world differently than you in one area, but you experience the world differently in another area that you would maybe need accommodations for.
For sure, for sure.
So, like the sound doesn't bother her, but it bothers me. But there may be something that she would need something for that for me, I'm like, oh, like, why does it need to be in that way? Why can't it just be that? We all have something
Oh
that
yeah.
we need it done differently for.
Well, I mean, if we're even just speaking on our process of operation, your process of operation is so much more organized, like visually and physically organized. My the way that I operate, everything is organized in my mind. Two very, very different ways of just operating. If there was a standard where one of those took precedent, it would be very difficult for either of us to, it would be difficult to work together in an environment where there's a system created where only one of us gets those accommodated. That would be really hard.
So think about your worries. What are you afraid might happen if you make accommodations? So this is from the leader's point of view, right? Some worries. It won't be fair to somebody else. It will lower expectations. Everyone will want special treatment. I know I think about that. Like, I can't make accommodations for every single person and do this one thing 15 different ways, which then I think actually reveals just even more worries and hidden commitments. Anyway, more worries. I'll create codependency. I'll say the wrong thing. It will complicate systems. I won't know where to draw the line. All of these are really legitimate worries
For
when
sure.
you're talking about making accommodations, especially within the workforce, but even within your personal lives and your relationships, like these are very valid worries.
Hmm.
And a lot of times they go unspoken, where you don't consciously think about them, but they drive our behaviors.
Absolutely. And so moving along in the process, discovering what we're actually committed to protecting is the next step. And underneath these worries, there are commitments to sameness as fairness. Efficiency over flexibility. I want to be efficient, especially if you are managing a group of people and you have to report on how you're managing that group of people to someone else, right? We all want to demonstrate that we have that there's efficiency, that we've created systems or that we're following the systems or the protocols that create efficiency. Underneath those worries are commitments to predictability over adaptation, or authority and control, commitments to not having to rethink existing systems. I see this all the time, is that it seems a lot. The anticipation of rethinking a new system is actually much worse. It's much more that anticipation, just like everything else that we tend to do in life as human beings, is actually much more difficult than rethinking the system itself. And also being committed to being seen as reasonable and competent. These commitments directly conflict with the inclusive part and the communication aspect of working with individuals who are neurodivergent.
So let's do some experiments. What assumptions must be true for this commitment to feel necessary? So, before we move to experiments, we need to talk about our big assumptions, right? So, what big assumptions are we making? Fairness means treating everyone the same. It means it's the same. Or another big assumption is accommodation weakens our standards. And if someone can do it sometimes, they can always do it. And effort should look the same across all people. So, some experiments we can do to test these big assumptions: offer written and verbal instructions and observe outcomes. So, what happens when you give instructions verbally and written? How does this change things within your organization? Or not even instructions, but just communications. Allow flexibility in method while keeping standards consistent. So you're clear on your end result, but how you get to your end result, people can choose how they're going to go about doing that. Ask one person what helps them perform best. Open up the conversation. Find out from people what they need. I remember an organization I worked in the first week, I think every single person I interacted with asked me, how do you learn best? And I was like, I don't think I've ever been asked that question. And this is in a professional environment, and everyone is asking me, how do I learn best? And I felt very supported
Mm.
in that question and conversation.
That question, that's such a simple question to ask, and also such an important question to ask, especially as a leader or if you're in a team, right? Like just asking someone like how can I work how can we work best together? What works best together, or what works best for you when you're in a team situation or a partnership? That's a really, really easy question. And I think that what I've noticed is that sometimes because we have such a hard time talking about accommodations, or there are systems that are set, and individuals who are neurodivergent have learned to navigate the system their entire lives. So by the time they get to the workforce, I don't know that anyone's necessarily asking for accommodations when you've
Right.
specifically learned how to navigate the status quo. But, and so I think like some hesitation might come from someone saying, I actually need X, Y, and Z. But when we can ask someone what helps them perform best, it opens that up a little bit more. And again, I think it's such a simple question that we can ask that can really go a long way.
I agree. And then our last small experiment we can do is measure results instead of process. So changing your mindset to your end result instead of this, and this needs to happen along the way can really open up to yourself to supporting other people.
The last step is collect data and move forward. So what actually happened when you put in place, or when you experimented with some of these ideas? Did performance improve? Did clarity increase? Did engagement deepen? Did outcomes stay strong or get better? Did your fear come true? And then revise your beliefs based on evidence, not assumption, not on the stability of continuing with a system that works for some individuals and not many individuals.
Neurodivergent people don't struggle because they are not capable. They struggle because systems mistake one brain style for the only brain style. Now remember, resistance is protecting something. So if you're feeling resistance towards change, take some time to get curious about this and walk yourself through this system that we just talked about. Good intentions aren't the same as impact. So just being like, oh, well, we want to include everybody is very different than actually taking action and having an impact on people. Capacity grows through experimentation, not certainty. And capacity is being able to tolerate discomfort. So if you are in a situation where you're feeling uncomfortable, you can consider yourself as growing your capacity. Inclusion doesn't require expertise. It requires curiosity, flexibility, and a willingness to examine what we've always called normal.
So this week, try one simple experiment in your next work interaction, and then just observe. Notice the shift, notice the connection. The goal in this situation isn't agreement, it's data, right? So we want to collect this data so we can revise our beliefs.
We would love to connect with you and support you on your communication journey. So visit our website at Communicate, Connect, Thrive and sign up for some coaching. We'd love to meet with you one-on-one and support you in this journey. You can also email us at communicationskillsforwomen@gmail.com
Until next time, speak clearly
and listen bravely.
When you feel confident in your communication, everything changes.
We'd love to hear your wins, failures, and insights on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. Leave a review and connect with us.
Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.